Welcome along to another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee, and there is neither sweet tea nor coffee in the room this morning.
And it's the morning time too.
It's morning, and I'm just gonna be honest. I'm kind of ticked about it. Here's a little background to just our church, and
people want to know what it's like up here during the week. And let's
pull the curtain back.
Yeah.
So here we are. We are a hypocritical church because we have a show called Sweet Tea and Coffee. And there is not a drop of coffee to be found in this building this morning. I've searched high and low. We have a Keurig, and you know what? The only little pods are in it. Well, it kind of half works.
Okay.
But
I use it for hot chocolate usually.
Well, that's really good. You know the only pods that are in there right now? It's those little holder with with all the pods. The only thing that's in there is tea.
Oh, I'll have to go look at that.
It's not sweet tea, Blake. It's
not going to add sugar to it.
It's the kind of tea that everybody just goes, "Oh, that's not what I wanted." You know? So we have no coffee. And then on my way in here, I was told our guest, who I've not revealed yet, but our guest who's sitting across from me said, "Oh my goodness, it smelled like a coffee shop in here this morning." So only to find out that my frantic search for a cup of coffee, I missed.
It was on its way out the door.
A lot of coffee this morning. Our university students were headed to campus with all their coffee for their weekly deal, and it was out the door before I was here. So if I'm a little edgy, that's why. So that's me. Blake, how are you?
I am just doing dandy this morning. I've been thinking about a word that I can use that would make me sound like an older man. You know,
dandy is good.
What was the word that you used the last time?
I don't know. You've started to make fun of me a lot more.
Tickled. Yeah, so we're tickled and dandy here this morning. It's a beautiful fall morning outside, and we have got a special treat for you today. This is a two-parter. This guest is going to be here for 2 episodes. She's got so much to say that we felt like we needed to break it up into 2 parts.
That's right. So it's a season finale guest split into 2 episodes. So this is episode 65. Episode 66 will be our actual season finale, but episode 66 will be part 2 of our interview with this guest. Should we tell them who it is?
Yeah, we just can't get enough, so we gotta go.
So this is this is a guest that we've been wanting to interview for a long time, but we had to wait until Ken Autry officially dubbed us as pros. So you heard that in a few episodes ago that we're now pros. But this is a guest we've wanted to interview for a really long time, somebody that is absolutely foundational and special in the life of our church and to us personally. We have got the Janis Robertson in the house today. She has agreed to a 2-part interview with us, and so we are super excited about that today. Let's go. Well, as I said, we've got Janis Robertson in the house with us today. And I was preparing, before we started this interview, I was preparing to obviously ask her the question, the sweet tea and coffee question. And when Janis came in this morning, she has an insulated mug. You can't tell what's in her drink. And I thought, man, I'm going to be really impressed. It's got this one of those gigantic straws in it, and I was going to be really impressed if she had coffee in that and she was sucking down coffee from a big straw. She was gonna be my hero. But then as I looked a little closer, Janis is a friend of the pod. Now let's just say that right now. Janis is a supposed friend of the pod. I put that in air quotes now because what she did for her interview this morning, she's sitting in front of me and she's got a drink that has, or a mug that has another podcast's logo on it. So big shout out to Outdoor Legacy Gear, who has apparently trumped us today.
I mean, we're probably not really in competition with
Sure we are. They got a podcast, so we're in competition with all podcasts. Yeah, they're all podcasts. She's got the Late Night Vision show on here, so a little plug for their pod. Who knows what in the world they're talking about? But but Janis is obviously a fan. So here we go, Jason Robertson. We're going to get a sweet tea and coffee sticker and slap that right over the top of the Late Night Vision show logo. And get Miss Janis here set up right. But
you think there's tea in there?
I have no idea what's in there. Let's get a big reveal. Sweet tea or coffee?
It's a coffee drink.
What does that mean?
Well, it means it has coffee and a lot of milk and a little more coffee that's flavored French vanilla and a little sweetener.
My goodness, what category do we put that in?
I think, when I went to university coffee the first time and was trying to order, I said, let me just tell you what I want because I make it at home. And so I really don't know what they call it, but I call it a French vanilla frappuccino.
I like how you said a coffee drink.
It has a lot of milk in it.
It's not quite coffee, but it's a drink. It's based in coffee.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll put that in another category.
I used to drink a lot of tea.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But as a blood donor, you have to keep your iron up, and they'd say, don't drink anything with caffeine in it. So I, during meals, so I stopped drinking tea during meals, and then I just got to where I just didn't like it at all, so I stopped drinking tea altogether.
That is really interesting.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that was probably a good decision.
Right.
On this show, anybody who scorns tea is immediately in my favor.
But I like peach tea and
Blake
things
knows
like
all
that.
about that.
Yeah, I was in a peach tea phase pretty heavy last month or so. So
nice. Okay.
I think it's McAllister's since they showed up in town. I really got into
don't they have like the unlimited tea? They can be in like
I
the
thought
tea
about
club.
it. Yeah, I thought about it. I didn't actually join it, but it was a serious consideration.
Well, thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Sure.
You are a guest that we've been very excited to sit down with. So I appreciate you taking the time. Why don't you start us off a little bit with your background and your childhood? Where did you grow up, and how did you make it to the piney woods of East Texas?
Well, I'm a Ben.
All right.
Nice.
Born at Memorial Hospital many years ago. And but my parents lived in St. Augustine, so I grew up in St. Augustine. Came to SFA, and
what was life like for you as a kid growing up in St. Augustine?
Oh, it was good. We did lots of family things. My parents had some friends, real good friends, and they had a daughter my age, an older son, and a younger son. And we did all kinds of things on the weekends or the summer. We would go to a place called Big Sandy, and I think it was just like a river or a big creek, and we would go swimming. Went to the lake over there at Milam all the time. I was in Girl Scouts. My mom was always a leader. I have one brother who is 18 months younger than I am. We lived in the country about 5 miles out of town. My dad worked in a bank. My mom stayed at home. Started band in the 4th grade.
Right. Nice, okay.
And continued all the way through high school.
What'd you play?
I played the clarinet.
Okay.
And then in high school, I was asked to play the bassoon in concert band. So I was a majorette twirler for high school. Just, happy family life. Not real involved in church. Always vacation Bible school. My mom always helped. But my dad got hurt really bad, and I don't really know when. I can remember he grew up Methodist, and I can remember this vague memory of when he was baptized in the Baptist church in St. Augustine. And but he got hurt and dropped out of church, and really never went back to church.
Okay, when you say hurt, do you mean like hurt, like relationally something happened in the church? Or you mean physically he got hurt?
No, he got relationally hurt. I think a pastor was asked to leave, and I guess he just didn't think that should have happened. And he was probably friends with the pastor, and just...
Wow, but you remember him being baptized?
I do.
What prompted that? Do you know?
No, I was young.
You were little?
Yeah, I don't know.
And then how old were you when he left the church?
I don't remember that either.
You just remember kind of those two moments. Stopped going down. When he stopped going, was that the kind of the end for your family going? Or
no, my mom and brother and I still went, and we're involved in some things in the church, but wasn't the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So you went to SFA.
I went to
How
SFA.
How did you make that decision? Did you want to stay home, or were you?
Yeah, I lived at home the first 2 years and commuted. I had a group of air quote friends who were commuting, and so we had a carpool. And people don't know what a carpool is these days, but we even picked up a guy in Denning. He didn't have a car, and somehow he got to Denning. We picked him up. We always dropped him off there. He helped pay for gas, but we took turns driving.
Now, why did you air quote your friends? I mean, if that's one category someone never wants to be in, it's the air quoted friends.
Well, it wasn't somebody close. We weren't all the same age, just different backgrounds.
Carpool friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, carpool friends.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I don't know, Blake. I wonder how many people, when they talk about you and me, they talk about us and do air quote friends.
Not at all.
That Blake over there, he's my air quote friend.
That's fine. Whatever.
That's scary. Okay. So you go to SFA. Now, what did you study at SFA? Why did you want to go to SFA?
I started out with a major in, I don't know what they call it now. It was pre-med tech and biology.
Yeah.
And so then as the couple of years, the situation changed, and got married, had a baby.
While you were in school?
Yeah.
My goodness. Okay. Yeah. That's challenging.
Yep. And my husband was actually in the military.
How did y'all meet?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that was probably a setup. One of the,
in air quotes.
Yeah. One of the guys in St. Augustine was dating a girl from Chirino. And I don't know. He introduced John and I, and we started dating. He lived in Melrose, but he went to school in Chirino. Now everybody in Melrose goes to Woden, so it's kind of changed a little bit. But yeah, we dated in high school, probably maybe for sure senior year, probably some in junior year.
Okay, so y'all already knew each other going into your time at SFA.
Yes.
Okay, you were already dating.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So you get married and you're in the middle of pursuing your degree. Was it like, okay, abandon ship, or did you keep going? What was the thought process like?
I kept going. I changed my major. Well, really, it was the same. I majored in biology, and second teaching field was English, and got my bachelor's. John worked at NIPCO, and he said, if you want to go on to school, we've got enough money. You don't have to go to work right now. So I went ahead just straight after my bachelor's and got my master's.
Wow.
In secondary education with a minor in English.
Okay. Wow. Superhero. So you get married as a sophomore, I think is that what you said? You're a sophomore? And had a baby while you were still in your undergrad? And then just kept going and starting a family, raising your first child, and I'll just get my master's as well. That's called multitasking, friends. Well, I'm sure that was tough. That was challenging, right? Or did you just breeze right through it?
No, I wasn't the best student in the world, but I got through.
Now, why did you want to get your master's?
I don't know.
Just
yeah.
Because you could.
Because I could, yeah.
Okay.
And eventually you get paid a little more money if you have a master's degree. So I don't know. There was a lot of emphasis on getting a master's at that time. I don't think there maybe is now.
What did you study for your master's?
I it was in secondary education.
Okay, secondary.
And English.
So at that point, did you want to become a teacher? Obviously. I mean, is that...
Obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did that... Because it started off pre-med biology, where did you kind of say, okay, maybe I want to be a teacher? Or was that always the plan? You just wanted to be a biology teacher?
Yeah, biology teacher. English, biology and English. I could have done either one.
You knew that from the very beginning?
After I changed my major, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I subbed some at Woden and some schools when I was working on my master's because most of those classes were at night. So,
why do you think you wanted to become a teacher? Was that something you had a good teacher in your past?
Wonderful, wonderful teachers in elementary school. I had good teachers, small school.
Yeah.
But my elementary teachers were just the best. There are very few teachers that I know who are as good as they were. Of course, that was in the 50s, so into the 60s. But everybody knew everybody, it was a small town, just a friendly atmosphere, just caring, loving teachers.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, most all of us, you would hope at some point in your education, you look back and there's that one or two, those teachers that really make a difference. That It's the combination of their care for their students and their love for what their subject matter is that really stand out. I had a math teacher in high school. It was just incredible. And it was that combination. But it seems like people that go into the teaching profession, that's almost always the case, that part of their reasoning for going in was how they were impacted. You hear that with coaches a lot too, that they had a great coach that made a huge difference, and that becomes the reason why. So that was your story too. You had great teachers and it kind of made you go, okay, I think this is something I could do too. Yep. That's cool. Okay. So then after you finished your master's,
yes,
you finished up, and what, did you go immediately to work to teach?
I did. I got my master's in May of 1974 and got a job teaching at Central Heights.
Yep.
You were ready for that.
This is where it gets interesting.
Yes.
So, speaking of fantastic students, I've heard that you had one student in particular that I'm fairly close to. That I'm sure.
I love your dad.
But he was a terrible student.
No.
He references things in Sunday school because I'm in his Sunday school
That's what's
class.
interesting now is that, he
Yes.
teaches your Sunday school class.
Yes. And he will reference things in, he'll look at me and, kind of like, you know what I'm talking about. I don't remember anything bad that he did. I might remember he wasn't the best student, but there were a lot of guys who weren't good students.
There was a whole crew in that was rough around the edges.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you have any good Roger Russell stories?
No.
Not that you're telling on this.
No.
Come on.
I don't know. I've been waiting to hear, from her perspective on what he was like in school.
Okay, so John is working at NIBCO.
Yes.
You're teaching.
Well, before we get to that,
okay, we got something.
We got to back up.
Okay, back up.
I got a job teaching at Central Heights, and we bought a house. I had been in school for probably 2 weeks, and John was killed.
Now this is, okay, put that on the timeline again. You had already graduated.
In May,
and you'd been working for 2 weeks? You'd been teaching for 2 weeks?
Yes.
What happened?
It's a long story. Basically, he was murdered. The gentleman who killed him went to prison. He was charged with involuntary manslaughter.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
So here you are now. How old?
Jeffrey was 5.
Okay, so Jeffrey's 5. You've just started a new job.
And the day he was killed, we were moving into our house.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
So your world just shuts down at that point.
Yep.
I mean, take us into that if you can. What's that like? I'm sure your head is spinning a million miles an hour.
My mom and dad they were just there. Whatever I needed, they were there. My dad, having been a banker, was wise, had good wise counsel for me. We had a loan on the house. We had mortgage cancellation insurance. Do you even know what that is?
I assume it's if something happens, you can cancel your mortgage.
Actually, the mortgage is paid off.
Really?
Yes. And,
wow.
We had not had the mortgage that long, but the house was paid for. So, just a blessing from the Lord that I didn't have to try to pay for a house at that period. My dad said, in good faith, you need to make a payment. So we went and I made a payment, and that was all I ever paid.
It's incredible.
Lived there for 20 years in that house. Yeah.
So
we had to go through a trial that fall. So, it was just an interesting time. I had been told that I needed to write curriculum guides, so I can remember I had a little typewriter, and the bedroom had like a little drop-down vanity area, and I can remember with a small light typing up a curriculum guide for earth science. When I was hired to teach 7th grade language arts, 7th grade life science, which that's the biology field, 8th grade earth science, 9th grade physical science, and biology. And in the 4 years that I was there, I was either the cheerleader sponsor or sponsor of the annual. I had been on the newspaper staff in high school. I knew nothing about annual. I was a twirler, knew nothing about cheerleaders.
They felt like that was a close enough connection that you could handle it.
You just do what they need you to do. So, it was an interesting time for sure.
Okay, so
not involved in church.
I was going to say, that's what I was just going to ask you about, because you'd mentioned, previously that your family wasn't really involved in church. Your dad kind of falls out of church. I mean, in a moment like this, you hear people talk about all the time that, these tragic moments, you fall back on your faith. And so where was your faith at that time?
I think I just trusted the Lord. I didn't have to have church at that time. I just trusted Him. I occasionally came to Fredonia Hill.
You would say you were a Christian at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I would say that.
Okay.
I had made a profession of faith when I was a teenager, probably during a revival. And I can remember walking the aisle. But that progresses on, and there's more to the story than later.
Okay. Of your faith? Okay. All right. Oh, gosh.
She's keeping us on track.
I know. She's keeping us on track.
Yeah.
Okay. So here you are. You've got a 5-year-old. You've got a new job with a lot going on. Not a very simple new job. You've got a new house. You're moving in.
I had a wonderful babysitter that was already lined up.
So what do you begin to do what does life look like from there to start to pick up the pieces? You're grieving. You're got all this stuff going on.
Move forward.
And how did you do it?
You just do it. You just do it.
Just one moment at a time?
Yes, absolutely. My parents were so supportive, and if I had something I had to do, they would keep Jeffrey. There was a bus that went from Nacogdoches, the bus station, across from the Hotel Fredonia to St. Augustine. And there were numerous times that on Friday afternoon, I would put Jeffrey on the bus, and he would ride to St. Augustine, and my parents would pick him up.
Wow.
So it's just one moment at a time.
Yep.
And lean heavily on the people that love you and are around you. Was that just your parents, or did you have, any larger community than that at that time? You're talking about not being connected to church.
There was one of John's and our good friends, a couple. He was actually shot in the foot, and I think the shot that went into John's aorta as he fell, I think the shot went into Don's foot. And he just about lost his foot. So, you just keep going. You just keep going.
Wow. Okay. So
teachers at Central Heights, just were wonderful friends.
Yeah. As we've interviewed people, one of the things that seems to come up in stories where there are tragedies that are similar to this is these very unexpected ways that God provides. Sometimes that's resources. You're talking about this insurance policy. I mean, what an incredible blessing. And then sometimes that's people showing up. I just remember in Brittany's story, just all the random, seemingly random people that would be there, and one would provide this, and one would provide that, and one would open their home, and one would, and it just becomes this long line of ways in which God stitches these pieces together to take care of us. And was that, I assume that was kind of your experience.
I think at that time I don't remember people doing quite as much as they do now, like in what Brittany was talking about. Yeah. Now, as the story progresses, in more recent years, I really experienced that.
Okay, so you're putting the pieces together one step at a time, and moving through. What do the next years look like?
Well, actually, John was killed in September, and in January, I had gone to my parents. I don't even know why. I went on the weekends, and they were having a get together with friends, and this couple had taken in Jack.
There's another air quote.
I say taken in because Jack, when he came to Texas from Oklahoma as a fishing guide, he had a lure manufacturing business and needed someplace to work. So he rented part of a plumbing shop from Bunk Seals. And Bunk and Anna Lou were great family friends. They had lost a son. And I don't know how many years before, but they just took in Jack. They had him over to eat, and my parents knew him. He had, of course, when they would get together, they would invite him out to eat. But, they're just taking care of somebody who doesn't have any family, away from home, and doesn't eat very good, probably. Totino's pizzas.
I still love those. Yeah. Okay, so this is where we meet Jack. What brought Jack to East Texas?
Okay. Well, he had a degree from Southwest Oklahoma and in business and accounting, and moved to East Texas to be a fishing guide.
Because I would assume at this time, this is probably the height of the new lake, so you've got Sam Rayburn and Toledo Bend active.
He became a guide on Toledo Bend.
Okay.
And his dad thought that was the worst thing that he could ever do until he got to come down here and go fishing.
Yeah.
And then it just miraculously all became
well, I'll tell you what. Toledo Bend in the 1970s was a hot. Yeah.
Hot.
Yeah.
Very
for
hot.
Sure.
Yeah. This would have been, it was still, when I met him, it was 1975, January. And it never snows in East Texas. I used to say that. Now it has snowed
it's happening a little more
often. But at that time, it didn't. I had a new car, and it was late, and I needed to come home because my cousin was coming to spend the night with me, even though we were going back to St. Augustine the next day. So I had to get home. My parents didn't want me to drive, wanted me to spend the night. And Jack said, Oklahoma, he knows how to drive on ice and snow. So he says, well, I'll take her home. So that's the beginning of us. We became friends, and he continued to guide, and I made many a spinnerbait, hog hustler spinnerbaits.
So that was y'all's bonding. He put you to work.
Yeah. Eventually. So, and I think he knew that he wanted to marry me, but I didn't get that. And he moved from.
What do you mean you didn't get that?
Well, I didn't get that feeling from him.
Oh, okay.
She didn't pick up on those.
Yeah,
cues.
Yeah. He moved to Lufkin. He sold his business to somebody over there. He worked for that company for a while. He traveled as a salesman selling hog hustlers, and he met a rep, fishing tackle, sporting goods rep, and the guy's dad had been in the business with him, and he was ready to get out. So he asked Jack if he would like to join him in the business. So, well, wait, I better back up. We got married before that.
Oh, now wait a minute. Yeah, wait a minute. You're still trying to figure out what you didn't pick it up. Get us back in. When did you pick it up? When did you pick it up?
So we dated, knew each other for a couple of years, but he was doing all of this, making the preparations. He had to have a stable job before he would ask me to marry him. He couldn't be a fishing guide. He couldn't just be selling fishing tackle for somebody in Lufkin. Mm-hmm. So
that's what he's preparing.
Yeah.
But you're not really aware of that.
He was still working for the company in Lufkin when we got married. We were engaged, and
is that when you knew he wanted to marry you?
Yeah. Pretty much. We had set our wedding date, and it was like a couple of weeks into January. And my students said, Miss Sullivan, you're going to be married before you come back to school. And I'm like, no. We already have the date set. Not coming back married. Nope. They just kept on and kept on. Well, premonition from my students. It ended up Jack had a fishing tournament that weekend that we were going to get married. So we moved it up to January the 1st, and I went back to school married. And they were like, we knew.
I would say, though, gentlemen, if you are pursuing a young lady that you would like to someday marry, Jack got away with it, but it's probably not in your best interest to reschedule your wedding for any sort of. Now I know it was his livelihood, but a fishing tournament move of a wedding is probably not in your best interest. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. No,
not in your best interest. No.
I don't know. It wasn't a bad deal. It wasn't. So we did it.
All right. Well, Janis said try it. So give it a go, guys. Give it a go. See how that works out.
So after we got married, then about 6 months later, he went to work for a sporting goods company out of, the guy lived in Marshall, and I think they worked for a guy, Kelsey Clay, in Dallas. So Jack traveled East Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi selling fishing tackle mainly, but De Beer baseballs, just different things they took on.
So before we just kind of get into you and Jack and y'all's life now as it starts to unfold, take us into because it's a unique situation. You've gone through some unbelievable tragedy and grief, and here comes Jack, and I'm sure there are unique ways in which he needed to care for you, and the way that y'all's relationship unfolded because of what you had been through. Can you take us into that a little bit, and how you were able to process grief, but then also begin to kind of be vulnerable and give your heart to Jack again? What was that like?
Well, it was just one of those things. Jack, he was, he was a great guy, and, very caring, loving. So,
So it was a natural.
Yeah. And he told me that he had said he would never marry someone who had a child. So, I had a child.
Yeah.
So, it was just an interesting situation. We just became friends, and then it just moved on from there. Jeffrey, loved him. We were in Walmart one day, and somebody saw us and said, "He looks just like his daddy."
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's that person. That's an air quote friend, and you just move right along.
Yeah, so he just stepped in. So,
how old was Jeffrey at the time?
Jeffrey was 5 when John was killed. He was 7 when we got married.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So then, Jack is he's getting into kind of some new territory and traveling, and I assume you're still teaching at this point.
Yes.
And, so what does newly married life look like for you guys? And I assume, are you here in Nacogdoches at the time?
We were still in the house on Wildwood Street.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we're moving along, and decided to have a baby. So I taught until the spring of 1978, and Jason was born in October. I kind of thought I might go back, and I was asked a couple of times to come back, but because Jack was traveling, we just decided it would be better if somebody was at home.
Okay, now at some point, and this may be, you were teasing us earlier about later on in the story, if you ask about Jack around this church, you're going to get one thing. If you ask about Jack and Janis, you're going to get one thing, and people are going to go mentors in the faith, giants in the faith, just people that walk near to God and have been an example and an encouragement to all of us. That's our picture. That's who you two are.
So you want to know how we got there?
Yep. Where does it? What's the catalyst? I mean, was Jack? Where was Jack's faith at that time that you guys were first married? What's going on in that part of your life?
Okay. I would say he was probably before that. Before he moved here, maybe. Growing up, he was a strong Christian. He grew up in a non-denominational church, small country church outside of Enid, Oklahoma, and his mom had grown up in the church. I don't think he was very involved in church. I know he went some in San Augustine, but and we went occasionally after we got married, and we came here. And we had some neighbors who came here and encouraged us to come to Linville Martin's Sunday school class. And so we started coming, probably Jason was maybe under a year old, maybe a little over. He was at that time considered a toddler. And Dodie Wyndham, and, her friend, her name has escaped me now, were working in the nursery. And, I can remember leaving him and him crying. And they're like, go on.
Yeah, that moment that all parents have to face,
yes.
the nursery
and
moment.
So we we loved Linville Martin Sunday School class and met people and got involved, and that was the progression. One Sunday, I know where I was sitting. I had this, you got to go now. You got to go to the front. So, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to join the church. So, I did. And Jack said, why didn't you? I would have gone with you. And I'm like,
oh, you just took off.
I had to go right then. There wasn't any waiting, talking.
Talking to you. No, I'm going.
I had to go. Well, probably that could have been when I was actually saved. I don't know. That, there's always that rebaptized business when you're young, and my friends in high school, were always being rebaptized, and I never did get rebaptized. But so I joined, and then Brother Dodson came over to talk to Jack because Jack wasn't a member. And Jack said, well, I grew up in a non-denominational church. I was baptized by immersion, but y'all don't take that.
Because at the time,
you
had
to be baptized in a Baptist church to become.
The Baptist water was the one that
yes, it was holy water.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So Brother Dodson was so sweet, so sweet. And he said, Jack, if you don't become a member, your family will never be involved. You will never feel a part of the church that you're going to. He said, this is man's rule. It is going to change. Prophetic. It is going to change. And he said, just pretend you're going swimming. So Jack said, okay. And after that, after he was baptized, that was just the beginning.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for you, that point was a moment where you really would say, I knew that God was talking to me.
Yes.
The response was, okay, just go do, but there was an obvious prompting.
Yeah, absolutely.
For you to go up front. And it kind of sets off this chain of events where y'all become members and start to get really involved here.
Yep. And I think Margie Berger takes credit for getting Jack into teaching. I don't remember, but she probably
did. Way to go,
did.
Margie. Way to go.
And I don't know all the progression. That's all. But we started a young singles class with some other churches, Northwood and University Baptist, and anybody could come. We met at the Red Barn, which, is burned.
Oh, yeah.
You remember.
I remember the Red Barn.
But we had young people, singles, not college kids necessarily, singles from multiple churches. And we'd meet there for Sunday school, and then everybody would go to their own church.
You did this on Sunday morning?
Oh, yeah, we did it on Sunday morning. But
interesting.
Yeah, it was good.
That's
cool. Was really good.
Yeah.
But, there were some people who didn't like the fact that we were not meeting in the church building.
Mm-hmm.
So it eventually stopped.
Now, was Jack teaching this?
He and Bob Hurst and Kent Pate from Northwood was involved.
Yeah.
So, great group. We had, I still keep up with some of the people who were in that class.
Wow.
One of them is a neighbor.
Now, is this where Jack kind of cut his teeth in teaching?
I kind of think so, yeah. And then, I don't know, maybe Margie got him in teaching in the church. Seems like he taught singles, and then we moved into teaching, it kind of evolves. We started teaching probably 30s and 40s. I was always the secretary or the outreach or something. I was always
taking
involved.
the attendance.
Yep, taking the attendance. You got it.
Make sure.
But, people don't understand. By taking attendance, I know who people are.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's right.
We had one of the moms' night in. I think maybe it was the first night that we met in the Gateway, and that was one of those situations. I'm just jumping all over.
No, that's all right.
Just jump.
That was a situation. Molly had put young mom's night in, and any other moms. Mm-hmm. Well, I just felt like the Lord was saying, "You need to go to this. You need to go to this." So I went, I'm going to go. So I went. And we're sitting around the bistro tables. We pushed them all together, and we had been visiting around, and Molly said, well, we probably ought to introduce ourselves because I know you don't all know each other. And I was sitting by her, and I said, they're all, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I said, I know them all. And she was like, sure you do. And I said, I do. She looked at me.
I've been taking attendance at this church for a long time.
But these were young women. Yeah. And so she said, okay, I'll let Janis introduce everybody. Ooh. So I went all the way around and came back to me, and she was like, oh, you
pretty
do
good.
know them all.
Janis is the walking church directory here at Fredonia.
No,
that's right.
No,
there's been some, one of our previous interviewees, one of our current elders, Bryn Williford. Mm-hmm. I'm going to definitely call him out here. He's been really pushing for the old church directory. And I'm just going to say, Bryn, we don't need it.
Yeah, we do.
Don't need it. Okay, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, we do.
We've got Janis. Janis can tell us everybody
right.
and all this stuff. Yeah. We don't really need it. Okay, let's move on. Don't support Bryn. Okay. So, all right, so go back to this, I guess the end of this singles, the Red Barn Sunday School.
Right. We came in church.
You came in church. Okay. So at this point, you've had your faith was kind of in before Jack, y'all were just kind of in a marginal place, I guess you'd say, with your faith. You begin to grow a little bit. You have this moment where God really touches your heart and you go up and join. It sounds like things in terms of your walk with the Lord are starting to really pick up.
Right. Right.
Jack's starting to teach. You guys are starting to get involved.
Right.
I mean, is this a moment in y'all's life where there's just explosive growth in your faith?
I think so. Yeah. And then probably, we were here in 1980 when the church divided. Mm-hmm. And, we visited other churches, and we had just about decided we were going to a church on Sunday morning, and just almost sure we were going to join there. And the preacher's sermon was it was against women. And we went with David and Janis Miller, and we were just like, we had lunch with them afterwards, and it was like, that is not where the Lord wants us.
Yeah.
Not at all. So, we came back to Fredonia Hill, and the Lord has never released us, me, to go anywhere else. So still here.
Well, that's a good
years
thing.
Later, yeah.
Pray that release doesn't come.
Yeah.
Okay, so
so then moving on, probably 1988, when Life Action Ministries came.
Mm-hmm. This is a big moment.
Very big, very big. Oh my, lots of growth in 2 weeks. Lots of growth. Lots of great teaching, not just preaching from, like as preaching, but family, a family preacher who talked about family issues. Just, it was amazing, amazing.
Yeah, a lot of people go back to that moment and just kind of, if you're not familiar with Fredonia Hill church history, a lot of people go back to that moment, and basically the catalyst for it was the split in 80, and it was a revival focused ministry. And for Fredonia Hill, it was a moment where they really dealt with that split.
There was a reconciliation.
Fredonia Hill took out an ad in the newspaper and as an apology to the community, to other churches, just for the way that they had exhibited Christ in a way that wasn't glorifying to him. Right. And it was a really powerful moment, but it was also a really powerful moment in the lives of individuals who were there. It was a turning point. It was a time where if you hear people talk about it, I think about George, I think about Jack. They talk about it as a time where their faith went from somewhat casual, maybe ritualistic, I don't know the way you would maybe describe it, but to incredibly serious. This is now everything. Yes. And became just engulfed their life. What was that like as you lived through that?
Oh my, lots of tears, lots of reconciliation with individuals in the church. That was at that time the deacons. I think Jack and George were maybe, I don't know, chairman, vice chairman of the deacons, or anyway, they got to lunch with the pastor and two of the gentlemen, Dale and Tim, and Mr. Let me see. It'll come to me. Older deacon, and they knew what had happened, but they said, we are not going to address this until someone in the church addresses it. So there was a time at the end where people could come up and share testimony, and so it happened. A couple of people came up with testimonies about it, how they had been hurt during that time. All their friends had left the church, and so that prompted lunch with, and I may have the timeline, they may have met before, but the guys from our church were asked. Mr. Kalkamai came to me, sweet man. They said, okay, Jack, what do you think happened? George, what do you think happened? Mr. Kalkamai, I don't know who else was there. And so they said, and then the question posed was, what would God say? That was the reality of it. It didn't matter what they thought happened. What would God say happened? So that prompted the reconciliation, then, preaching on that and moving forward. So it was a glorious time of teaching and learning.
Yeah, and restoring, I think as I've heard people talk about that moment, restoring Fredonia Hill's focus, back on the gospel, back on Jesus. The focus had become so man-centered and man's agenda, and that it really kind of, those moments in churches, and certainly Fredonia Hill is not one that is the only place where this has ever happened, but when men take over and take control, it quenches the spirit. Exactly. It happens to us individually in our lives as individuals. It happens to us in churches when we say, "No, Lord, we're going to do this the way that we want to do it," and we set our own agenda. Then the spirit is quenched, and that's what happened during that period of time.
Absolutely.
But this was a renewal and a restart.
It was,
and it really set a chain of events in motion that kind of from that point where Fredonia Hill really, I would say, just got back on track, and it wasn't easy.
No,
lots of difficult moments. But
I mentioned Tim and Dale, but the ladies met during the week at, I don't know, in the morning, and Nancy Lee DeMoss, now Wolgamuth, taught 2 weeks of teaching with Nancy. I mean, that is just priceless. Priceless.
One of the things that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that I think this sets into motion is the prayer group. Mm-hmm. The coming out of this, one of the things that people at Fredonia Hill, particularly Jack, George, that group, got really serious about was praying.
Right.
Staying humble before the Lord, praying together. Mm-hmm. And they started gathering early in the morning. And that was something that took place then and carried on for years and years and years.
Yes.
So that's interesting. So you guys then you're caught up in kind of this renewal reset. Mm-hmm. Jack, George, these guys are kind of thrust into this leadership that maybe they weren't necessarily expecting, but God had got a hold of their hearts and called them to lead, and they begin to lead. And yeah, I think that's an interesting place for us to take a pause.
Yeah.
That's an interesting moment of climax and also setting the stage for what's to come. So we're going to take a break.
Yeah. Look at this. You thought this was the last episode of the season, and now you get another episode. How about that?
Who knows how this is going to shake out. Blake, our producer, is going to have to deal with the fact that I'm cutting one episode into two.
That's okay. That's great.
But hang around. Yeah, I want you to hear more of Janis' story. There is so much more to come. We're going to stick around with her as always. Shout out to us. Give us a little notice of how this has helped you, impacted you. And we'll see you on part 2. Adios.